All right, okay. You know, let's just do it. All right, okay. So,
Yes.
okay, welcome to what is it? Episode 6? Clearance on Creepy?
Yeah,
What?
episode
Okay.
6.
Episode 6. Yeah, okay.
Episode now.
Episode now. Yes. So, today we're going to be covering Goatman. This one's kind of a weird one. I don't really have too much to say about it because part of the difficulty here with regards to understanding Goatman is that there's not really a sort of consistent lore or a consistent amount of lore that I can find about it. But first, before I get into Goatman, let's start off with co-hosts Jaden
Yeah.
and Steve.
Hey.
All
Was that
right.
supposed to be a self-introduction section?
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you say that? You just said, we'll start off with co-host Jaden, and like you're about to elaborate on what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, Jaden, you have
okay.
to start off. You need to tell us about Goatman right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So
Tell me a little bit about Goatman, Jaden.
Okay, so Goatman
Yeah.
is story
Okay.
that you read
Yeah.
to us,
Yeah.
and it was a good story,
Yeah.
and if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
there was shape-shifting goat creature in it.
Yeah.
And you claimed there were startling and striking similarities to an ancient myth of Goatman, like cryptid or creature throughout mythology. And that's what you're here today to talk to us about.
So it's not like a
I
Spider-Man
don't know.
villain.
Yeah, no, I don't remember that, but all right, okay. I'll just say yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so Goatman. So a frame of reference here, right? I'm going to be reading a few passages, but not the entirety of it, but there's a particular story that came out in about 2012. Yeah, it came out in September 2012 by a user by the name of Anansi of 4chan, the exports. For anybody who's not familiar, 4chan is a series of boards which all are separated by topics, but for the most part, they all have like their own little kind of cultures revolving around it. So you'll get like very different vibes, like say going into a board like say Fit versus like say A, or like the video game boards, or all of that kind of stuff. The paranormal boards.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just gonna stop you there real quick. That's like really like kind of you and all, but do you really need to explain what 4chan
Yes,
is?
of course, because that the moment I don't, somebody's gonna be like, "You should have explained 4chan, dude."
With 4chan.
What the heck is 4chan? All I know is the hacker 4chan.
Hacker known as 4chan.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to like 1 through 4, 1 through 3chan? You know.
Yeah. Of
They were
course.
left
that's
in
fine.
Yeah.
different states, I think.
Yeah.
Countries.
Yeah, 4chan was originally created by Moot after Futaba-chan when the Something Awful forums had a little bit of a content exodus because Richard Lotax Kyanka, who ran Something Awful, really, really hated anime. So they're just like, all right. So they essentially did the sort of Bender, we're going to do our own blackjack and hookers sort of deal.
Yeah.
How well did that go, eh?
I'm going to have my own board with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah. And it's really funny because now 4chan also hates anime. So
So the board that this particular story came from is from the X board, which is the paranormal board. Paranormal is kind of a little bit of a weird beast, primarily because it sort of straddles between two different sort of groups. There's, on one hand, the group that largely talks about, general paranormal stuff, but then there's the other hand, there's the sort of schizo posting conspiracy theory kind of like side of paranormal, and so like those kind of exist within this weird, spooky ecology board. But the one that we're talking about specifically here is a story called Anansi, and it's just called Anansi's Goatman. Now, Anansi is, as far as I can understand, so I don't know a lot about Anansi, and admittedly, I don't know... What the hell was that? Oh my god.
My cat is just screaming.
Oh, okay. Oh my
There's a
god.
goat man in the room.
Yeah, what the?
That's...
That was a human baby. What the hell?
yeah, that's... Wow.
Yeah, it's the sound of goat man, right?
Of course. So, admittedly...
Spooky.
So, admittedly, I don't know too much about Anansi or the exports and all that kind of stuff, right? I can't say for certain, but from what I can understand based upon the very limited research that I did for this episode, Anansi seems to be like a general regular poster who posts like pretty good stories, right? They've done like other stories before, as far as I can tell, and so I think one of the things that's really important is to understand that there is a good chunk of the Goatman story, which is, its purpose is not to sort of come to some clear, truthful veracity, but more so like this is written, I think, as a sort of very... It's sort of more like an electronic version of a campfire story, And
That's a good way of describing it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason why this is really important is because Anansi's Goatman is written in very particular ways that sort of give it a very informal but also very personal kind of prose to it. Now, of course, we won't be reading the whole thing because, it's a very long story. But there are a few passages that I think give not only like a little bit of credibility, but also kind of a really interesting voice to the story. But it's also like very tight in terms of like what it is trying to convey in any particular given moment. This is really important when we talk about, for instance, last week we talked about, Steve went through Sonic.exe, right?
Spooky story.
Yes, the Sonic X.
And
Yeah.
Sonic.exe has this sort of like very, it has this like very sort of like florid, purplish kind of like prose to it, because it's like this very sort of languid atmosphere that comes as a result of like amateur writing, where it's just like,
Well, you have to explain what the video game music is in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
And what the actual level looks like, so you can play it.
Oh, yeah, of course. Like, everything needs to be explained in Sonic.exe to create the perfect environment that the author is envisioning.
The music is exactly from a different game.
Yeah.
It's the music from Chrono Trigger, of course.
Yeah, of
with
course.
the samples of sound effects from Final Fantasy VI.
Hell yeah, dude. So, yeah. In comparison, when we're talking about Goatman, so when we're talking about the Goatman story, Anansi's Goatman, so it's just going to be called that going forward, the prose is a lot different. So for example, I'm going to pull it up right here. Pull it right here now. What the fuck? The moment I talk about Goatman, Pizza Hut calls me.
Whoa.
Damn.
Oh my god.
You're
Guys,
saying
get
there's some sort of
a sub?
pizza-related
do you see
conspiracy?
that? Do you see that? That's Pizza Hut. They're calling me.
I don't see that because I don't see your computer.
Oh, man. If this
Are you
was
trying
3
to tell me
a.m.,
that
you'd be like, Pizza Hut called me at 3 a.m.
what do they want?
Well, I ordered a pizza a bit back. They're probably just calling me to be all like, hey, how was your experience? And I should have responded back with, it was good until you guys called me.
Oh, savage. You should have told them that they didn't get there in time and you're not paying for the pizzas.
Yeah, after I've already
It was not pizza time.
after I've already paid for the pizzas.
Yeah, 29 minutes. It wasn't 29 minutes.
29 minutes. All right, so let's get back to the Goatman story. Okay, so an example of like how this is written, right? So I strongly recommend that you read the Goatman story first, because this is not really going to be a sort of like, follow us as we journey through the Goatman, etc., etc.
You should do an audiobook of the Goatman story so they
Yeah.
can follow along.
As a supplement, yeah.
Of
it's a
course.
supplement.
Yeah, if
Or you could try and save the old recording when you did read the whole thing.
like I don't have the recording ananymore. I needed to.
Alright.
I deleted
Removed.
it so I can
You needed the
Destroyed.
space.
so I can record
More BB
more
tag.
Blaze Blue footage.
Yeah.
There we go. Blaze Blue beats the Goatman, destroyed by Blaze Blue once
I was
again.
like, I need to record more Blaze Blue footage. But hey, here's what. If this episode gets to, I don't know, let's shoot for something
Manageable?
ambitious. 600 views.
Oh, shit.
600 whole
Damn.
views.
Yeah, if it gets to 600 views, I'll read the whole Goatman story. I'll read it
Yeah.
like all spooky campfire shit
Yeah.
and everything, you know? It'll be like
Yeah, you
40
gotta add some
minutes.
spooky sound effects.
You know, you want
Yeah,
to fall
and the
asleep
next
to the
episode-
sound of me reading the fucking Goatman story? I'll do it. 600 views.
Yeah. And then intermittently will be the sound of Steve's fucking child he's kept in the basement, just crying out every.
They're on my lap.
Yeah.
They're on my lap now. I'm consoling them. So
You
they're
know,
not
I
it's-
happy.
see. You're a kind slave master.
Yes.
It's really funny because I read that all the time, right? Or I hear it all the time where people are just like, yeah, the sound of a cat or a kitten like mewing sounds like a child crying, and I never really believed that until I heard your cat make that noise.
My cat can make a noise that sounds like hello, which is quite unsettling as well. Like, it
Oh,
knows
yeah.
that it's calling out
Well,
in a way
looks like
that
that-
would be hello.
There's some
Like-
stupid meme video that was like, oh, a cat with a British accent. I'd like has to be seen to believe, and then the cat it sounds like it says hello, and then it goes, oh, good evening.
Oh, quite. Crikey.
Yeah,
It was funny because a section of that actually shows up in the Goatman story when we're talking about animals sounding like humans.
yeah. We're not just incredibly disorganized. See, it's all connected.
It all comes back. This is actually all planned out. You know.
Yeah, this is actually all scripted. I don't know
This
if
is
you knew
actual.
that.
Yeah, this is actual scripted. You know,
Just like
I
the
write.
Goat Man.
Immaculate performers.
I write the scripts, and they're just
Yeah.
reciting off the script. So when I wrote down Steve, I wrote tired. You know,
Yeah. Fell
Acting
asleep
notes.
before the recording.
fell asleep. Okay, you know Steve's method acting.
Yeah, it's the only way I can.
All right.
I'm like James Woods in that Simpsons episode.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I also told him to write that too. You know. Okay. So let's
Start the fucking podcast, man.
So if you haven't heard of it, right? So if you haven't read it, if you haven't heard of it, if you're just like, you know what, I'm already into this podcast, I'm not going to fucking stop and read it. If you want to hear it, so this is like kind of how it's written, and you can kind of get a feel for how different it is from Sonic.exe, right? So this is near the beginning. So I'm just gonna read like 4 or 5 paragraphs at the beginning. We ended up just taking the day away. So we head back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out and camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail towards Tan's property. The rest of us chill. We make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we started. This really nasty, coppery smell, like right before you've had a nosebleed and it stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty, metallic back of your throat smell. We think it's some kind of electrical malfunction or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path towards us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all coming running into the clearing out of breath. And they don't even break stride. They run all into the trailer right by where the fire is. So it's got this very... So it has a lot of the hallmarks that you would see in sort of amateur personal recitation, you know, someone left a hot plate on or some shit, you know, some shit. There's a few repetitive or redundant elements. You know, there's this smell, nasty smell, this back of your throat smell, but it's never to the point where it lays it on too hard. That makes it feel like, okay, somebody is really trying, in a bad way with this kind of story.
Yeah. Yeah, it has an element of, like, too, because I think a very common pitfall of creepypastas in general, or any sort of, like, paranormal story told on the internet, is that they almost always take a framing device of, like, someone's rapidly typing this up and posting something that happened to them, right?
Yeah.
That's what Sonic.exe was. That's what Whole of it's like, this crazy thing happened. But even though it's just someone, like, using it's almost in a found footage kind of way, right? Like the found post, I guess, But, like, a pitfalling of so many of the others is that despite it being, a personal recount of something that happened, their memory is immaculate.
Yeah.
Like to the point of, like, details that if especially if they're, like, flight or fight response was going full bore and they were just so afraid, they're not going to remember, like, the intricate little details of, like, exactly how many eyelids the monster had as it breathed down its sulfur, shit like that, And what's good about this story is that, like, he constantly, like, misremembers details. Like, the way it's written is the person can't remember exactly, I can't remember the time, I can't remember when this happened, or how long we did this for, or, it avoids a lot of that,
It's very stream of consciousness, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also, like, very it's also very action oriented, because it's sort of like the veracity is sold because it's, like, very action oriented. So, like, for example, there's a section here where he goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out running, but to make sure that they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. So, like, as you mentioned, Jaden, right? Like, the father's never described. Like, we don't know what the father looks like. We don't know what the father's
he's
like.
it's like
we don't.
his father, who was a man
Yeah.
with a big
Yeah.
burly beard and
Yeah.
7 scars from his time in the Vietnam War, where
Yeah.
he, bravely fought. There's none of that.
Yeah, like, none of it, because none of it matters, And, like, realistically, assume, let's assume that the story even happened, right? The person reciting what the events of the story would not describe what the father looks like. They would just be describing the events that led to the next sequence of events that would, that would then continue the story.
The father isn't really important. Like, what they look like. That's just, it's just like a means to an end. Like, we went to talk to this dude. He did this.
Yeah.
We move on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think any character is particularly described in appearance or anything like that.
Yeah, there's I think so. To give a little bit of context as to, like, what exactly Anansi's Goatman, the setting is. So the story is the protagonist is visiting his cousin down in, I think, Kentucky or something. It's in the South,
Somewhere in the
Alabama,
South,
Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama. So he's visiting down, and it's all rural, it's farmland. They're all chilling, and the whole general premise of the story here is that they, with his cousin and, like, a bunch of his cousin's friends and whatnot, they're, like, camping out in the woods, chilling, but they're not, like, far away from the house. They're not too far away from, like, any particular place. They're not like we're in the middle of the fucking Appalachians,
Siberian desert.
It's not like it's not like that kind of story where they're just like, we're out in the middle of nowhere in the Appalachians.
Yeah.
Not a soul miles around. Like, none of that, right?
We had no network coverage.
Yeah, no network coverage.
Yeah.
It's,
Where's your 5G now?
all of us don't have COVID. Coincidence? Yeah, so there are a few elements about the story that I think are really strong, which is that it's not actually too far away from, say, quote-unquote, civilization. It's very action-oriented, even though it's very long. A lot of stuff happens. A lot of stuff moves. And one of the things I also wanted to mention is that, like, it's very loose. It's very, very loose with what's being described and what's going on. And what I mean by that is that characters will come in and out constantly. And so what happens is that creates a sort of puzzle, because the whole sequence of events is that they're out vacationing, they're camping, and then somebody, like, slips in, That's Anansi's Goatman story. That's the summary of it. Somebody slips in, and then the story sort of like makes this very sudden turn where it becomes like, okay, who's the person that doesn't belong? You know, there's something among us. You know. So the whole story about Goatman is not like, oh my god, you know, there's no like sort of like great unveiling where they're just like trying to figure out the ancient secret mysteries of the Goatman, you know. It's just them trying to grapple with this intruder into where they are. So one of the elements that I want to talk about, however, is that so later down, when it actually directly mentions Goatman, this is where the passage goes. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any spooky talk right now. So, like, there's a very natural cadence to the way that this is written, right? But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking Goatman and how we're in his woods and blah, blah, blah. Now, at the time, I'd never heard of this Goatman or any of that. But then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated college, I had a Venom for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift and gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. So, I think this is a good place to sort of get into the general discussion of like what Goatman is, because one thing that's really important here is that this description of the Goatman in Anansi's Goatman story is not very... It doesn't actually align with generally what Goatman legends are like. This is more close to a Skinwalker story. So if anybody is curious, a Skinwalker is... Okay, I don't know how I can describe this without sounding potentially like weirdly racist or anything, because like... What is the non-offensive way to say witch doctor? Like...
I guess just witch doctor.
Oh, yeah, I guess so, yeah. So
From the song?
Pardon?
From the song?
No, like the actual like thing in like the Caribbean kind of like voodoo.
Like what are they called? Like I don't know, magic practitioner? I don't know.
I don't know any personally. I couldn't tell you.
Is it like complicated like
a doctor of wizardry?
Yeah, a doctor of wizardry. Yeah, professor of
necromancerologist.
Yeah.
PhD in wizardology.
Yeah.
I had a book called Wizardology when I was a kid.
Wizardology?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, at the end of the book, it was like a how-to book of how to be a wizard written for like kids or whatever. And it's like, obviously it's just like a piece of like fantasy or whatever, but I just remember it very distinctly. The very last one was like, I'm about to attempt my greatest spell yet, and the spell backfired and he turned himself into a chicken. And that was the end of the book. And I was
Got
like,
him. Yeah. So essentially,
that has nothing to do with Goatman, but
no worries. Essentially, a skinwalker, right? So a skinwalker is largely a Navajo legend, referring to somebody who has submitted a thesis in partial fulfillment of the Doctor of Philosophy of Necromancy.
It's an elaborate way of saying it.
Yeah. All right, there we go. We figured it out. I figured it out.
There you go. You're not going to get cancelled, Joe.
Yeah, I'm not going to get cancelled. Okay.
You're not going to get cancelled by the witch doctors. Oh, no.
Oh, I can't believe it. I'm going to get cancelled now, but...
Yeah.
Oh, no. What are they going to do? Take our podcast away?
Yeah. Damn it. We'll only get 500 views, not 600.
We're gonna get 599 views, and we're like, yeah, we're just.
And in the last second, they press a button. YouTube deletes.
YouTube deletes.
Flagged for racism.
Yeah, no, they're gonna be flagged for sexual content. You're just like, I can't believe it. What? How does this work?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Joe,
Gone
you'll get the
wild?
footage back and you realize Steve's naked the whole time.
Oh, I didn't tell you.
I'm like, how did that happen?
Well, I knew. I could feel it.
Yeah.
There's vibes in the air.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I only sleep naked.
Yeah, this is yeah, that's how the Irish communicate, telepathically.
Of course.
Yeah, you get
Yeah,
naked.
it's a very
and
elaborate piece of law.
Yeah, then 10,000 kilometers to the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
You use a potato, you fall asleep. There's some whiskey in there somewhere too, whatever.
Yeah, it's some ancient Irish magic, some ancient like Celtic magic called like Siad Bolach or something,
Yeah, the Irish law, the legends,
Yeah.
they speak of it.
Of course.
The League of Legends?
Whoa. Where the fuck were we?
Well, we're talking about
Fuck
you were
if I
talking
know.
about skinwalkers.
Oh, skinwalkers, yeah. So this is actually a lot closer to skinwalkers, right? And one of the things about skinwalkers is that skinwalkers can... But this is also kind of a little weird, because skinwalkers, as far as I understand them, generally don't turn into other people. They generally turn into animals. A lot of the stories, when you read about like people talking about like experiences with skinwalkers on reddit.com/r/skinwalkers, they talk about, for instance, how like they're like washing dishes and then they look outside, look out the window as they're washing dishes, and then they see a fox by their car and they're like, oh, look at the little fox. And then the fox like stands on its two hind legs and walks away, and they're just like, what the fuck was that? Like
Pretty spooky.
like that's well, I mean, in my opinion, that's scarier than 2 Cents horror. All right.
Yeah. What about the one where it was like he was just pointing a shotgun?
Which was a metaphor for
Yeah.
what was
For
it?
a
I
shotgun,
should put
yeah.
my phone on silent. What a professional podcast.
That's okay. Whatever.
That's us.
We have a small enough audience base right now that we can get away with it.
True.
We can use editing magic to make it
But once
avoid
we
it.
hit
Make
600
it
No,
views
more
on this bad
professional.
boy.
I'm not using editing magic to fix anything.
That's because in the story, the Goatman or the creature or whatever, like mimics humans, and it kind of
Yeah.
preys upon like I was mentioning earlier, like the fact that like you can't remember all the details is part of the narrative, because that's how like they're able to the creature at several points just like takes the guise of a human and slips into the group, and because there's like this like it's set up in the story that it's like they're not all like this tight-knit group of people. It's like he knows his cousin and his friends, and then he invited a friend of a friend who invited some friends. So it's this group of people who don't really know each other very well. And so as part of the narrative is that like they do a head count and they're like, wait, no, there were only 11 people.
Yes.
Yeah, they have no idea the numbers, and there's a vagueness to it.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
means that
because,
you
like,
can't really
in
ever
that-
pick up on.
And it preys on that idea because, like, in that scenario where so many of these faces are unfamiliar, what's one more,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite of the Thing, where like the Thing is sort of like a strict group of people where they all know each other, and then it's like, which of you is acting funny? Now it's kind of like, fuck, what even
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
is even here happening here? We don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
Strangers
how does
among
that compare
strangers.
to the kind of traditional Goatman myth?
So Goatman, right? One of the things that's really important when we're talking about Goatman is that Goatman is a more general category to refer to a series of satyr-like creatures that have been cited or have been referred to in local legends and folklore. I'm going to be speaking primarily in the context of, American Goatman myth, because I feel like somebody out there is probably going to be like, why have you not talked about, I don't know, the
Scandinavian Goatman.
yeah, the Scandinavian Goatman. It's just like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
had 2 weeks to prepare this. So one of the things that's really important to understand is that when we're talking about Goatman, we oftentimes aren't talking about so when we're talking about say Bat Squatch, right? Bat Squatch shows up in a few different areas, but they're all kind of under the umbrella of the Bat Squatch sightings. When we talk about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, there's Bigfoot sightings, but Bigfoot sightings happen all over the place. They just end up being put under the Bigfoot. Goatman generally refers to more of a cluster of localized sightings with their own specific names. So, for instance, you have situations where there's quite literally things called Goatmen, like, say, for instance, in Texas, the Greer Island Goatman is a 1969 sighting where a 7-foot monster jumps out at a whole bunch of people, and it
7 foot,
spooks.
damn.
Yeah, 7-foot man. So not 9 feet this time.
No, this is like just a really tall guy.
Yeah, just a really tall guy, probably. But they described
With
him
mange.
as covered in... yeah, he's got mange. They described him as somebody who's covered in burns and cuts. So I feel like it may just be like a 7-foot tall man who's been attacked by something, and they're just like, it's
Yeah.
a
Dude.
it's a monster.
Poor dude. Yeah, poor dude escaping from like this terrible like catastrophe.
Can you
Manages to
im-
get away with his life, but horribly scarred, and then people make a fucking cryptid out of him.
Can you imagine if
Yeah.
he's like the victim of like some serial killer, like locked up in a basement? He's like
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
might
some-
be.
just-
10
yeah, like
years
throwing
of
acid on
torture.
it.
He's like 10 years of torture. He finally like gets out, he sees like light for the first time in 10 years, he's covered in hair, cuts, burns, bruises. He just fumbles through the woods, and then there's like a bunch of white people sitting around having a picnic, and he's like, "Oh my god, guys, you gotta help me." And they're like, it's a goat man.
monster.
It's a monster.
It's a monster.
Burn it.
I say, Jennifer, get my Remington.
Yeah.
That's what white people sound like.
Yeah. Especially during the
Yeah.
late 60s.
Yeah, right.
But if you go, say, for instance, to Louisville, Kentucky, the Goatman is actually called the Pope Lick Monster. Whereas if
Interesting
you
name.
go
Wait,
up
what?
to... Yeah, it's called the Pope Lick Monster.
The Pope Lick Monster.
Yeah.
Where does that name even come from? Is that even relevant? I don't even know if I want to get into it today. We
Is the Pope involved?
No, so the...
What the fuck?
So it's a reference to the location that it was cited, called Pope Lick Creek. And I don't know why it's called Pope Lick
That
Creek.
raises further questions.
I don't know. I mean, like... I don't know. I mean, like, there's another
What's the next
Goatman
creature,
variant.
The next creature, the
It's called the-
cock nibbler, like...
Well, it's called the Proctor Monster,
Fucking hell, it's not that far off.
which is, I guess, I mean, I know this is not the real answer, but it would be funny if it was named after, like, oh, we saw it near the Procter and Gamble factory. You know,
These local people don't seem to be very good at naming these creatures.
the Johnson and Johnson beast. The
I think
Pfizer
Pfizer has a better
pharmaceutical
term.
monster.
I mean, I believe that one sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty lit,
Yeah.
actually.
That sounds pretty scary.
Yeah.
Only found in the factories.
Yeah.
Fucking monster. He just
so-
he just gigavax too much. I mean,
I
he's now
can't
turned
wait
into
until
a
we get to
beast.
the point where corporations, instead of like sponsoring like sports teams, they're just trying to copyright like monsters.
Cryptids and monsters.
They just see like you see something in like the lake, you're just like, oh my god, is that the AstraZeneca snake?
My favorite snake.
Yeah. God.
So these...
God damn it,
Look-
my cows! They're being eaten by the Microsoft Windows 7 beast.
Oh no, not the Activision beast.
The Activision.
Oh, no, it's not. That one's really scary.
Oh.
So these local Goatman sightings, what did do? What's the common thread?
The common thread is that they're incredibly violent. Goatmen. So this is another notable departure from Anansi's Goatman story, because in Anansi's Goatman story, the Goatman is pretty non-confrontational. It kind of just like spazzes out and jerks around a little bit, and kind of just seems to have a kick out of like messing with people, but it doesn't actually do anything dangerous. It doesn't actually like attack anybody or anything.
That we know of. I thought there was maybe some of the fear in the story that he may have killed a couple people, but they didn't even notice.
Well, so
As
I
people vanish.
think the implication is that like he came in and then he kind of just like as far as I understand it, it seems like he came in and he kind of just like looks like other people, but they don't know each other well enough to know like whether that person has been like quote unquote replaced or like added. This is like one of the sort of ambiguities of the story, I think.
I think that probably leads to it a bit, that you don't really know.
Yeah.
Because they never find like a body. They just know there's a smell that's quite severe.
There's also that one section, right? There was also that one section near the very end of the story where one of his cousins actually like sees something crawl in through the window, and then it just kind of stands around, and then it goes to sleep, you know. And he mentions how at odd hours during the night it would just like jerk around and then it would go back to sleep. So like it didn't really do anything, it seemed.
In that one instance.
Yeah,
so I think there was some implication because he was awake at the time, that it might know he was awake.
That's true. Yeah. So even though, right? So like let's assume, however, that it did do something to these people, right? This is also very different regardless from Goatman, at least in the general Goatman sightings, because one, sometimes these Goatman legends are armed. Apparently the Maryland Goatman will sometimes be reported walking around with a fucking axe. And two, there's this sort of like weird sexual violence that underlines a lot of these Goatman stories. Goatman is sometimes depicted as this sort of like bestial enemy who will rape men and women.
Wow, maybe Activision Monster wasn't far off.
the Activision
That was
beast.
closer than I thought.
Yeah. And so one of the things that's really important is that a common thread I've noticed is that with Goatman sightings is that it's kind of agreed upon that you might not necessarily survive encounters with Goatman. Of course, the question is, how would they know that if they don't survive the encounters?
Yeah.
But that's sort of like the Goatman folklore, right? You're not supposed to run into them.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, well, the stories you do hear, that's the small percentage of people who escape, then you go, well, how many missing people's cases, how many unexplained deaths or whatever have been caused by Goatman, I guess, is part of the implication of such things.
Yeah, this is something that's not necessarily mentioned, but I think the reasoning, and this is pure speculation on my part, but the reasoning why is, I think it's that because Goatman is probably more understood as a demonic entity rather than a traditional cryptid.
Yeah, because I was going to say common depictions of like Satan show him in like a
he's
like
very
goat
like
form.
He's like a satyr.
Yeah,
he's got like goat. He's got like goat feet and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean that kind of comes from paganism, isn't it? It's like a demonization of pagan religion.
Yeah, the sort of imagination of like Baphomet and whatnot.
Yeah, you've got things like, you know, in the Vitch, you know, where it's like Black Phillip the goat. Yeah, great film. Yeah. Where the you know, Black Phillip the goat is like the personification of Satan.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think it's really important to. So in this context, I think it's really important to understand Goatman not necessarily just as a cryptid, but as a piece of like local folklore, especially local American folklore, because of Americans' puritanical roots. This sort of imagination of this satanic entity, this violent satanic entity, and oftentimes, for instance, in Phelps County, it is understood that Goatman will hang around grave sites and graveyards, and so it's become a sort of like a teen thing, apparently, to go to graveyards at night and oh my God, spooky! Are we going to see the Goatman? Is he going to kill us? Like that kind of thing, right? The idea of Goatman in general is also kind of an invasive being,
Mm-hmm.
It's very intrusive. It shows up, it can be sighted, but those sightings and those encounters are not things you actually want. It is an other which is always going to be there. And part of that, I think, is partly because of its imagination as a sort of a demonic entity. A demonic entity is like a thing that can always intrude, that can always come in. It's an other that you don't want to deal with.
In this context, it comes in what's basically like a vacation, right? There's sort of like a time away,
Yeah.
in a very personal sort of something. I guess that's supposed to be quite relaxing. This sort of you're away in a trailer.
Yeah, you go away.
It's like the worst time you could possibly find something to do that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you were in like a crowded office building, like it could still
then you
be
can,
scary, but like it would just be like it's called security, like.
Yeah, I could see like in that aspect of like, well, maybe I could lose an hour of work this way. There's like something interesting.
Yeah, right.
might
You'd be
happen.
like, yeah, it's fundamentally different if it happens like during work hours or yeah.
It just comes up during work hours. Goatman,
Yeah.
you're at the local CVS.
It's just like bad customer service, then, isn't it? It's just like fucking. Got another fucking asshole customer today. Some Goatman motherfucker came in, smelled like fucking rusty blood, and he just screamed. It was so annoying.
So yeah, if they did have any other interesting stories, because it was very well written, it was and engrossing the whole time.
Yeah, they got quite a few on the exports. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass to navigate some of them because this isn't like exports. This is like archives of it from 2000.
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue with something like X. I mean, that's part of the spontaneity of it and the appeal, I guess, too. But like, in terms of archiving and saving some of these stories, a lot of creepypastas in general, because they do tend to be posted on things like X, where it's like actually like tracking down the original post is tedious.
Yeah, it's also very difficult to try and get like a vibe of what like the place was like.
Yeah.
Like in 2012, which is it's almost a decade ago. Oh, it is a decade ago.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There you go. Ooh,
God.
that's
Yeah.
spooky. On the anniversary of the
Yeah.
posting of the story, we read it
'Cause,
again.
Yeah, the thing like with X now is also like, from what I've seen of X now, is like X seemed to used to like. There's always this dichotomy with it, but it seems like the other side of X is like actual wackos posting, schizo shit. Like
Yeah, yeah.
threads that begin with, "Did anyone notice there was no Wednesday this week?" But because posts like that have all
Curious.
become popular, people try to like fake it and make posts like that. They deliberately post ironic shit, hoping it'll get like seen, whatever. So yeah, it is a different vibe from, because you gotta think like things like the SCP Foundation started as just random X posts. Which the X version of them would have very different feels to the version that's on the SCP Wiki. So something like tracking down a lot of this stuff and getting the exact original feeling, that not just from the individual stories, but like as a whole, the idea of a creepypasta, the whole like copying it and pasting it across, different forums. It's just not really a thing now, because people just want to go to the original one. People want to know where the original source is. They'd just like, yeah, they'd much rather do that rather than the campfire retelling of it, where it becomes like, because the thing about campfire retelling is it depends on who's telling it. They might change some of the details, on how they either what they remember, they don't remember things, so they have to fill in the blanks, or they just think it'll be scarier if they change it, something like that. And so,
Yeah.
I do think that story kind of captured that element a bit. Like, this is not the first time he's told it, and maybe when he told it to someone else, it wasn't told the exact same way, because memories are faulty, and no one ever tells the exact same story the exact same way twice.
Because I think he's implying it was quite a while ago when this story happened, right?
And there's that too, yeah.
Yes. Like a very long time ago. Which like
yeah, so like time got the best of him, and so maybe he doesn't even remember.
He even like sells it like, yeah, that sells it even better, because like not only was this recited in 2012, but like like he had already graduated college when he was reciting this. Like that's the sort of
Yeah.
like the idea, right? Because he said like,
Yeah.
oh, when I was in college. So
It's framed very well.
Yes.
It's framed very well. Because
It has
and that's
a
I think
look.
that's the thing you've got to nail for any sort of horror, but especially for like internet horror, is you've just got to frame it properly, because if you don't, it's not even the fact of like because I don't know if anyone even genuinely believes this story, right? But like to actually be like engrossed in it, like to separate it from all the just junk, because no one believes anything on the internet anyway, So if it's not framed
Yeah.
properly, even if you don't,
I think it's the legitimize what would be the word? Legitimate creepiness, where
Right.
like you can't push. There's a very thin line between like getting into sort of something that's camp or very like grindhousey, and then like where that line is on how believable is the creepy. Where am I feeling?
Yeah.
Because they started going like the Goatman's goat face appeared, and he
and
was
the
a
little
demon
goats
from
came
the
out of
universe.
his head, and then they made little
Yeah.
goats too, and then I was a goat.
No.
Yeah, and then he ate everyone, and then I
Yeah.
survived
And
only, and
skeleton
it was
popped
all
out,
right. But what are you gonna do? I know it happened a couple of years ago, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
She said, "Do you love me forever?" And he said no. And she cried and crossed the street and got hit by a car. And he went up to her funeral.
yeah,
and
because the
said, "I
conceit
love
of a
you."
story like this is always difficult because the person has to survive it
Yeah,
in a way,
that's
and they
another
have to
element,
like
Yeah.
they have to also write it all down in some way, or they have to know it.
If
like,
you frame it
so
the way that
fervently.
this story's been framed,
Yeah.
yeah, that it's a retelling. Because if you're just writing a
Yeah.
piece of fiction, yeah, you can have your main characters be killed at
Yeah,
the end.
sure.
But
yeah.
when you've got something
you
like
want
this,
to do it
where
that way.
the idea is that it's
Yeah, it feels
Because then it has to
very
be found footage sort of thing. Then it has to be like someone rescues this piece that you've written.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
if-
recovered this document from. But then it's also like like that's another thing too. Like if it's like the recovered diary of somebody, it's like there are very few cases where it's like. I mean, that could work if it was like an apocalyptic scenario and someone just wants to like have like they're slowly dying and to sort of keep saying they keep a diary, But like if you were in this situation and like you were trapped in a room and you knew the Goatman's outside, you're not going to be like, anyone got a biro? I'm going to jot some
I'm
notes.
gonna write
down."
this down.
Yeah.
This might come in useful later on.
They jot
Yeah,
this
so-
down.
So that's that depends on the individual story as well. So
It feels like how can I describe it? I don't know if there's a better term for it, but it kind of feels like a kind of like a kayfabe horror, where it's just like even if you know it's like fake, it has like that feeling of like realness.
it has an effect on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the believability of like that fine line that it walks of like, can
Yeah.
you empathize with the creepiness of the
I
story?
guess it's really suspension of disbelief. It's this idea of like, okay, even if you read like I hear that story, right, and I go, okay, that didn't happen, right? It's fiction, but you want the way it's written to make you think it could have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, the uncomfortableness of having something invade the house that
Yeah.
you don't really understand. It's just sort of like twitching and being creepy and it's in front of you, and there's something
That's
you can do about it.
yeah, because for horror to be effective, too, it's like it can't just be the monster. It has to be what that monster like represents. And it can be something basic of just like like
It's a big ass
being
spooky
mauled.
monster.
Yeah, big spooky monster, something invading your home and doing it, but like it can't just be like evil Sonic doesn't represent anything. Evil Sonic is just evil Sonic.
Dude, it's pretty spooky. It's Sonic.
It is
He's evil.
spooky, yeah.
I think there's also something that I think Anansi's Goatman story really works and excels at. That I think Sonic.exe unfortunately kind of falls
Falls
flat
short.
at. Which
What-
is that
what
like
that?
there's so much jargon in Sonic.exe.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good point, yeah.
There's
What, you don't want to hear about why he likes the Sonic Unleashed levels
yeah.
because of their open worldness?
Like it's just like if
Yeah.
I didn't know anything, I don't know anything about Sonic. But like
Yeah.
if I even knew less than I did about Sonic, I would be all like, "Who the fuck is Eggman?"
Yeah. Well, that's and again, it comes down to the he didn't waste any details. Like he didn't put any necessary details. Like even the thing of like when they're like, we'll go back and get the rifles.
Yeah.
It's just the word rifle. It's not
Yeah.
like when you get my Remington 12 gauge, with
Yeah,
double
with bump
action
stock.
grip and boxed up and
I got laser sights.
fucking hollow tips and
Yeah, we brought the hollow
it's
tips.
got
We're gonna
hollow
fuck.
tips. God
we're-
damn.
We're gonna fuck
yeah,
this
this Goatman.
thing
He ain't
up.
got,
Transform into
Is he
this
gonna bring the-
motherfucker.
Is he bringing the dum bullets too? He's like,
Yeah.
fucking-
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's
we
none of
brought-
that, right? It's just
Commit
Got
carry the rifle.
napalm and white phosphorus.
Yeah.
Dude, this guy came back from Vietnam for real.
Yeah.
And the same thing you said, Steve, which is that like he
Hmm.
doesn't really describe what they look like because
Yeah.
for this sort of story or for a lot of stories, don't really need to.
No,
Except
it's
for,
not
like-
really relative.
No.
Yeah, sometimes less is more
Yeah.
with that. And maybe it's a good thing he never tried to describe how this creature that came in through the window looked. 'cause,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it looked the same as everyone else, but we don't know what
Yeah,
anyone
yeah,
looks like.
yeah,
So it wasn't like he was like, but it had a dead stare, like his eyes were blank white. Ooh, he's got goat eyes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like in the Anansi's Goatman story, there is like a section where it is kind of described, not as like its real form, but like as what it looks like as a person, and it's just
Yeah.
like kind of like staring blankly, like
Yeah.
not like in sort of like, like a creepy blank stare kind of thing, but more just like, just dull, dead-eyed.
Vacant.
Yeah, vacant, right? Because at the very end, right, where it says, let me try and get down to the very end here, where they're describing what it looks like. Yeah, there we go. I'm guessing I had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up, and then getting in among us. Among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house, and then he sent it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking into the woods. Sorry, where is it? Where's that girl? The
I think
vacant.
it's earlier on in the story,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because like in the middle of the night, she's
Yeah.
following and always a little bit behind, but not
There is
talking.
there is also that there is also the part where like he's trying to describe what it sounds like,
Yeah.
There was like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fuck in, stop fucking playing." It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body. And one of the girls, that's
it's a good
also something I
description.
really love, right? Which is that like there's
There's a voice to it.
There's a voice to this, right? It's not like he didn't write, "It made my skin crawl,"
Yeah.
Yeah, he gave you something more
He
personality.
just like, dude, it made
Yeah,
my fucking
yeah.
nuts creep up against
Well,
my
'cause-
body, bro.
Like Sonic
Yeah.
the Sonic.exe guy, who was like, using such erudite terminology for like someone who like really probably
Yeah.
wouldn't,
He was really spooked.
to describe
His
talking
heart
about
was
a
racing.
Sonic game.
Sonic. Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
the
that
reaction
was.
there is
I
more
wanted to
key
comment
than-
because like, it's like excessive swearing in this kind of story can work against it, right? It can make it seem like juvenile and like unnecessary, but it's handled very well because like it gives a certain voice and a certain cadence to it, and
Yeah, he spends more time describing how his nuts fucking troll back than the actual sound of the
I
creature.
mean that is pretty spooky.
So there is something that I've noticed, right? Something I noticed when I was reading this again, which is that like Anansi. So I think the sort of when people like go over like the sort of like the F-bomb threshold is when they use it more than once per sentence, and I don't think Anansi ever breaks the sort of like. I'm pretty sure they do like now and then, but like they rarely break the one F-bomb per sentence kind of like
Yeah,
rule.
the only time they've really done it is I think like when like the girl is like screaming and like hyperventilating and saying, "Oh fuck, get it fucking away from me, fuck," where like
Yeah.
that like it goes far enough that you can do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
it's a good story.
yeah, it's
Would you
Anansi's
recommend it,
Goatman,
Joe?
and
Would you recommend
yeah,
Goatman? Goatsy?
I would not recommend Goatsy.
Yeah, but you didn't have to cut me off, man.
Different one.
Yeah. So I guess we're gonna have to do that thing, that engagement thing that a lot of people do. So let's read some of the comments from the previous podcast. I'm gonna read some of the comments from the previous podcast episode. That way, people will be more incentivized to respond.
To actually write a comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
I
Sounds
got
good
one
to
from
me.
a guy called Stephen here.
Okay. No.
Who says,
It's funny because that's one of the podcast hosts.
Okay. So Trinitro of motherfucker. All right. So
they've already got you there. They already have the names too hard.
Trinis says the game is ... curse.
Ooh.
That's apt.
Oh yeah, I don't know how to
That's
respond.
very succinct.
Yep.
I mean, it's not wrong.
Chris
Yeah,
Labor
it's-
says, gonna get 0 sleep tonight. Thanks a lot, guys.
You're welcome, brother.
Well, I guess we proved the fact that it does affect some people.
Yeah, that's true.
It does. Yeah.
To be honest, I'm glad. For me, I'm glad it's the morning when we record these, because otherwise I'd
that's
be way
true.
too spooked.
You would be so
Yeah,
spooked.
now I'm gonna have a hard time getting back to like dozing off. Now I'll have a hard time now.
Yeah.
Just Goatman speak and Sonic speak. Oof.
Yeah, Werewolf says, Sonic.exe was so poorly written, it got removed from the Creepypasta wiki and moved to the Trollpasta wiki, and that was well before irony-posted humor became mainstream. It's hilarious that it's now more well-known from edgy Friday Night Funkin' mods nowadays. What?
I'm not sure what that last bit is, but it did get cut. It did come back.
Is
It
it
did come back. It is
Friday
on there
Night
currently.
Funkin'?
That's where I read it. Is that
It's a Friday Night Funkin' mod?
Is that Five Nights at Freddy's?
No, that's the Friday Night Funkin'.
Is it the dancey game?
The dance game. You have the girlfriend in the red dress everyone makes porn of.
What? That's a
It is a
game?
Newgrounds game after all.
Yeah, that's a game.
Oh, okay. What the
Yeah,
fuck?
it got kind of popular with VTubers and other like streamers for a while.
Yeah.
Because it's
Oh.
quite it's
Joe,
frequently
Are you still out of
updated.
touch?
Sonic
No,
EXE.
it's the children who are wrong.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so if you want us to read off a comment, if you want us to read off
Get
your
us a
comment,
good one.
yeah, leave your
Give us a funny one.
give us a funny comment. These are funny
Yeah.
comment
Yeah,
that we can make
funny-
voices
Don't.
out of. Not a
Don't.
racist
Yeah,
one.
Because you'll write something you think is funny, but then it's not.
Well,
Yeah.
what if it's like funny racist though?
That's
No.
true. That's okay.
No,
That's
I don't-
fine.
We're not big. We're not big enough to last that.
Yeah,
We're not big enough to weather that storm yet.
that's fine. We're all POCs.
Yeah, but we're making fun of it, so like it's okay, right?
Oh, that's
It's
true. Yeah,
satire.
that's true. Yeah.
You know, Joe's Asian and Steve and I are Irish, so we're...
Yeah, so we're obviously potatoes of color.
Yeah, exactly.
I am the first of the people who were enslaved by the British.
There you go. I was the second. No, I was like the 526th, but...
Yeah, you're somewhere on the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, but then
Yeah.
90% of the
The
planet
list is quite
really-
long though, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks, dude. My people got enslaved by the Thai. We didn't even get enslaved by like white people, man. We got enslaved by other POCs. This sucks.
Yeah, you'd
know?
be spilling.
They beat to the chase of like the white people. Like, so no, out off. We got keepsies. We got them first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like playing a rogue deck, and you don't even lose to a meta deck. You lose to like mill. You're just like, what the hell?
I don't know what any of that means.
I know that a lot anyway.
I didn't even lose to top tier. I just lost to mid tier.
So,
Yeah. So
Was
yeah, that's
Goatman?
pretty much it.
Good story.
Goatman. Next week we're gonna be doing Candle Cove.
that's right.
Are you ready for that, Jaden?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So once again, leave a comment that you want us to read off for the next episode of Clearance.
Tell us about a story. Tell me about video game creepypastas. I should just look up 2 seconds before I do my episode in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Also, yes. Also, one thing. If there is something you want us to cover, let us know, because that way I don't have to like keep thinking up of episode ideas. I can just be all
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we'll just do that."
Yeah,
Getting a stooge up
recommend me
for
something
him.
that isn't Ben Drowned. I probably will do Ben Drowned because that'll be easy. But like, I should probably get some other
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, we
like,
just
less
become a
known.
creepypasta podcast.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
We're getting more views
Give
that
the
way.
people
so,
what they
you know.
want.
I mean, hey,
Can
look,
this get 10 likes?
if you want
10
if you want
likes?
creepy,
Whoa.
if you want more creepypastas for us to dissect very poorly, then
Yeah.
let us know.
Do it.
Yeah.